Good evening and welcome to our daily devotional reading. A special welcome to the members of our imaginary monastery. I'm seeing the sunset as we speak, or at least the afterglow of the sunset is still in the sky. Always a peaceful sight, and that will become more and more my daily experience as daylight fades later and later. The return of the light. Let's see if we can find some light in the words of Plato. Stranger. I was doubtful before in which of them I should place the Sophist, nor am I even now able to see clearly. Verily he is wonderful and inscrutable creature, a wonderful and inscrutable creature. And now in the cleverest manner he has got into an impossible place. Theaetetus, yes, he has. Stranger. Do you speak advisedly, or are you carried away at the moment by the habit of ascending into giving an hasty answer? Theaetetus, may I ask to what you are referring? Stranger. My dear friend, we are engaged in a very difficult speculation. There can be no doubt of that. For how a thing can appear and seem and not be, or how a man can say a thing which is not true, has always been and still remains a very perplexing question. Can anyone say or think that falsehood really exists, and avoid being caught in a contradiction? Indeed, Theaetetus, the task is a difficult one. Theaetetus, why? He who says that falsehood exists has the audacity to assent the being of not being. For this is implied in the possibility of falsehood. But my boy, in the days when I was a boy, the great Parmenides protested against this doctrine, and to the end of his life he continued to inculcate the same lesson, always repeating both in verse and out of verse. Keep your mind from this way of inquiry, for never will you show that not being is. Such is his testimony, which is confirmed by the very expression that sifted a title. Would you object to begin with the consideration of the words themselves? Theaetetus, never mind about me. I am only desirous that you should carry on the argument in the best way, and that you should take me with you. Pick me, pick me. Stranger, very good. And now say, do we venture to utter the forbidden word, not being? Theaetetus, certainly we do. Stranger, Let us be serious then and consider the question neither in strife nor play. Suppose that one of the hearers of Parmenides was asked. Be careful what you wish for. I said I wanted more of Parmenides. And here he is. Suppose that one of the hearers of Parmenides was asked, to what is the term not being to be applied? Do you know what sort of object he would single out in reply, and what answer he would make to the inquirer? Theaetetus, that is a difficult question, and one not to be answered at all by a person like myself. Stranger, there is at any rate no difficulty in seeing that the predicate not being is not applicable to any being. Theaetetus, none, certainly. Stranger, and if not to being, then not to something. Theaetetus, of course not. Stranger, is it also plain that in speaking of something we speak of being? For to speak of an abstract something naked and isolated from all being is impossible. Impossible. You mean by asserting to imply that he who says something must say some one thing? Yes. Some in the singular, t, you would say is the sign of one. Some in the dual, tine, of two. Some in the plural, tines, of many. Exactly. Stranger, then that's how their grammar worked. 1, 2, 1, singular, plural mostly, but there was also a dual tense. Theaetetus, exactly. Stranger. Then he who says not something must say absolutely nothing. Theaetetus, most assuredly. Stranger, and as we cannot admit that a man speaks and says nothing, he who says not being does not speak at all. Theaetetus, the difficulty of the argument can no further go. Stranger, not yet, my friend, is the time for such a word, for there still remains of all perplexities the first and greatest, touching the very foundation of matter. I do like the gravity of this sentence. Theaetetus, what do you mean? Do not be afraid to speak. Stranger, to that which is may be attributed some other thing which is. Certainly. But can anything which is be attributed to that which is not? Impossible. And all number is to be reckoned among things which are. Yes, surely number, if anything, has a real existence. Stranger, then we must not attempt to attribute to not being number, either in the singular or plural. Theaetetus, the argument implies that we should be wrong in doing so. Stranger, but how can a man either express in words or even conceive in thoughts things which are not, nor or a thing which is not without number. How indeed? Then we speak of things which are not. When we speak of things which are not, are we not attributing plurality to not being? Certainly. But on the other hand, when we say what is not, do we not attribute unity? Manifestly. Nevertheless, we maintain that you may not and ought not to attribute being to not being. Most true. Do you see then that not being in itself can neither be spoken, uttered, or thought, but that it is unthinkable, unutterable, unspeakable, indescribable? Quite true. But if so, I was wrong in telling you just now that the difficulty which was coming is the greatest of all. What, is there a greater still behind? Well, I am surprised after what has been said already that you do not see the difficulty in which he who would refute the notion of not being is involved. He who would refute the notion of not being is involved in a great difficulty. For he is compelled to contradict himself as soon as he makes the attempt. Diotatus, what do you mean? Speak more clearly. Stranger, do not expect clearness from me. For I, who maintain that not being has no part either in the one or many, just now spoke and am still speaking of not being as one. For I say not being. Do you understand? Diotatus, yes. Stranger. And a little while ago I said that not being is unutterable, unspeakable, indescribable. Do you follow? I do, after a fashion. When I introduced the word is, did I not contradict what I said before? Clearly. And in using the singular verb, did I not speak of not being as one? Yes. And when I spoke of not being as indescribable and unspeakable and unutterable, in using each of these words in the singular, did I not refer to not being as one? Certainly. And yet we say that, strictly speaking, it should not be defined as one or many, and should not even be called it, for the use of the word it would imply a form of unity. Quite true. How then can anyone put any faith in me? For now, as always, I am unequal to the refutation of not being. And therefore, as I was saying, do not look to me for the right way of speaking about not being. But come, let us try the experiment with you. What do you mean? Make a noble effort as becomes youth, and endeavor with all your might to speak of not being in a right manner, without introducing into it either existence or unity or plurality. Diotatus. It would be a strange boldness in me which would attempt the task when I see you thus discomfited. Stranger, say no more of ourselves, but until we find some one or other who can speak of not being without number, we must acknowledge that the Sophist is a clever rogue who will not be got out of his hole. Most true. And if we say to him that he professes an art of making appearances, he will grapple with us and retort our argument upon ourselves. And when we call him an image maker, he will say, "Pray, what do you mean at all by an image?" And I should like to know, Theaetetus, how we can possibly answer the Yonkers question. Theaetetus: we shall doubtless tell him of the images which are reflected in water or in mirrors, also of sculptures, pictures, and other duplicates. Stranger, I see, Theaetetus, that you have never made the acquaintance of the Sophist. Why do you think so? He will make believe to you have his eyes shut, or to have none. What do you mean? When you tell him of something existing in a mirror or in sculpture and address him as though he had eyes, he will laugh you to scorn and will pretend that he knows nothing of mirrors and streams, or of sight at all. He will say that he is asking about an idea. What can he mean? The common notion pervading all these objects, which you speak of as many, and yet call by the single name of image, as though it were the unity under which they were all included. How will you maintain your ground against him? How, stranger, can I describe an image except as something fashioned in the likeness of the true? And do you mean this something to be some other true thing? Or what do you mean, Theaetetus? Certainly not another true thing, but only a resemblance. Stranger, and you mean by true that which really is? Really being, is the other translation. Theaetetus, yes. And the not true is that which is the opposite of the true. Exactly. A resemblance, then, is not really real, if, as you say, not true. Theaetetus, nay, but it is in a certain sense. Stranger, you mean to say not in a true sense? Theaetetus, yes, it is in reality only an image. Stranger, then what we call an image is in reality really unreal. Theaetetus, in what a strange complication of being and not being we are involved. In what a strange complication of being and not being we are involved indeed, Theaetetus. Thus far our scripture of the evening. This was fun. I struggle to see exactly what it has to do with the Sophist, but this is fun. I like this language game. I also very much like the fact that Folly posted his essay on Nietzsche on Socrates today, and I am extremely tired. I got up before sunrise to do ritual. And I had a lovely but full day. It was sunny and I was out and about with a friend and a dog. So I'm tired. So I will have to read it again tomorrow. I even forgot why I started mentioning that. That's how tired I am. So I will have to reread it tomorrow to really be able to think about it even. But when I prepared this text for reading, before I read his part text, although I think he already shared it, I had to think of Wittgenstein and this language game. And someone commented on, maybe I can see the name. Oh, I hope I don't stop. Leroy commented on Folly's post, and I thought his words were lovely. He spoke about how Nietzsche pointed out, I think, that Socrates was the beginning or a symptom of how the West went into a direction that language, and specifically reason then, became the norm by which we measure truth. And that's not a very good norm. As I said, I'll have to read it again tomorrow. And I noticed something of Wittgenstein also in his comment, so I asked him, and he responded kindly and said the later Wittgenstein indeed referred to I'm reading his words directly. It's not a paid post, so I think everyone can read it. Our tendency to mistake the limits of language, of a language game, for the limits of reality, which I think really, really summons up today's passage. Our tendency to mistake the limits of the language game for the limits of reality. And I'm not sure that is what the stranger is saying. That maybe it could very well be that he's just saying we cannot speak of not being. And not necessarily that he's saying there is. See, that is being. So that is the language difficulty, right? But my personal experience with the ineffable, the unspeakable, and all the synonyms to that word, is non-being. But indeed it is ineffable. It falls outside our language game. Maybe we can change the language game. Because I read the first sentence I wrote was the stranger asking Theaetetus, are you speaking out of habit, or have you actually considered your response? I think so often we just speak out of habit. And maybe that is the the good in the language game, to sometimes pause and think and feel. In my circles, people often say, I need to feel into that. Feel. And then try to say the unsayable. Express the inexpressible. Or maybe we should just transmit knowledge via kissing, like some of the new Platists did. Wouldn't that be a fun monastery? They didn't really transfer knowledge, they transferred their souls, which might be the same thing. Not transfer, just shared. Contradiction. I think I heard Folly one time say that someone proved that some sort of contradiction is in fact possible, although it's been considered since Aristotle's time to be impossible. But I'm not sure. I just like all these things. I like contradiction. I think that's where the really real resides. Which brings me to truth, because what is truth? We're in search of truth overall this year. And I think I stated right at the beginning that to me the truth is the real. And here I see the really real, although that is in the other translation. And I have no doubt, even when I try to say or be exactly the opposite of what John teaches, I use his words and maybe even his way of thinking and being. And this really real is very Vervaekian. The image, though, as the really unreal, that feels like a talk of how it feels. It almost hits me a little bit. Because it's one thing for something to not be really real, but for it to be really unreal is quite a different level, quite another level of not truth, right? And panpsychism, the word is in my head, but I'm not sure if that's the concept is really in my mind when I say that image and all of being all of incarnation is a type of image. And then maybe the unspeakable, the nothing, the not being is the only real. Or am I getting a bit too now? Folly recently said another thing or wrote another thing. I'm not sure. I can't keep up. Remember. Oh, he wrote that. And he said, this might be woo. And then he spoke about, or wrote about, stretching. The boy has such a low tolerance for woo. It's so adorable. So I don't know what he would think of my interpretation of the really real and the really unreal. I'm gonna get ready for bed. So tonight there is no tea because I'm tired, not because this is a make-believe monastery only. Although I should still have my night tea. Thank you for joining me again tonight. I wish you a lovely night's rest. And may the spirit of Sophia be with you.